Right from a very young age, I've been fascinated about the ears. My dad was an ENT surgeon, and he would hold my hand and show me the inner part of the ear. He would let me visualize the beauty of the canal and the eardrum. And I didn't know at that point in time that this was going to lay a foundation and be a building block for what I love, my passion for patients, and the passion of being an ear, nose, and throat surgeon. It's amazing how sound travels through the air, through the ear canal, and strikes on the eardrum. When it strikes on the eardrum, it causes vibrations, which make the tiny bones in the middle ear to move. This movement causes a change in pressure in the inner ear and causes ripple effects of a fluid in the inner ear. The ripple effect shakes a membrane which moves the tiny hair cells we have in the inner ear. And this movement these tiny hair cells act as transducers that convert the mechanical energy to electrical impulses through the auditory nerve to the brain. So in a nutshell, that's how we hear. Babies can hear. When you bang the door, they startle with reflex, or they turn to the point of direction as they grow older, or they are calmed by the soothing sound of a parent or a loved one. This, however, is different from communication, because to communicate, you need to pass an information, an understanding from one person to another. And there are different ways we can communicate. We can communicate written, verbal, non-verbal, or you can even communicate all three at the same time. Like, you can hear my voice, there is a signer on stage, and if there was a presentation written out. For written, we talk about letters, text messages, or emails. We also talk about different interpretations when you read a message. Just imagine a sign on the road which says, "Don't talk while you eat." It means different things to quite a lot of people on this presentation. To some, it may mean one thing, to another a different thing. And it ranges from politics to table manners. To me, as an ear, nose, and throat surgeon, I'll be thinking it helps us prevent foreign body aspiration. While you eat and the foreign body goes into the airway, and it can be a form of emergency. I remember being worried growing up as a resident and seeing a lot of children who eat and have granules being thrown into their airways and things like that. It scared me. And my children did not take granules or peanuts until they were like 4 or 5 because of the fear of what I had seen. So a sentence or one word can mean a lot of things, and it means different things to different people and can be applied differently depending on the context in which it is applied. For verbal communication, we can use our voice. The musician Miriam Makeba used her voice to draw attention to appetites that occurred in South Africa. Our very own Sonny Okosu also used his voice to drag attention to things that were happening in Nigeria. In communication, we need to be clear. There has to be clarity in anything we have to say. In the medical profession, when you ask your patient specific questions, you need to be clear on what you want to find out. The same thing when they speak to you, everyone needs to be understanding. We understand each other because what you say determines the diagnosis the doctors come up with. If I use some big medical terms, my patients won't understand. But if I'm talking to my colleague, then it is okay. So clarity is very important while communicating with the next person because it determines what you will get or your response at the end of the day. I remember in those days, in the 70s and 80s, where parents would want to step out of the house and they would say things or play tricks on children and say, "I'm not going anywhere, I'm at home." And then when you turn around, they are gone. They've sneaked through the back door. I also remember the common trick then was, "Go and get your shoes. I'll wait for you." And when you get back to the room, they were not there. Those were the tricks that when we were younger, we saw parents do. A few years later, I became a parent as well. And I was faced with the same challenge of my kids eager, wanting to go to places with me, eager to go to work. I had to make a decision to either trick them as I had seen or as was communicated to me non-verbally, or I had to do something different. I chose the latter. I decided to sit my children down, explain to them in clear terms, in a way they would understand why mommy had to go to work, why I had to go alone, and how distracted I would be if they were with me. Clarity in my communication to children who were 4 and 6 at the time. It was wonderful because they understood. Hugs, kisses, and a farewell goodbye. It is important to communicate, even with signs, directions along the road. On stage with us, we have a signer. A signer helps us communicate with those with hearing impairment. We need to capture those with hearing impairment in our midst. And it helps with the understanding and clarity of the message I'm trying to send. But the question is, how many signers do we invite to our seminars? How many signers do we bring in to our events? Some will say it is not necessary. We rarely have those with hearing impairment attending our program anyway. But the question is, are they absent because you don't provide those services? Are they absent because if they are there, they will not participate, they will not benefit because there is no means of communicating with them? Are we doing enough to ensure that the forms of communication, written, verbal, non-verbal, use of signs, the signers, or even a written script are being communicated and captured? Are we capturing the entire populace? Are we getting everyone involved? I grew up in a very closely knit family. I had 2 elder brothers who were twins and then 3 sisters. We're siblings, but we're more like friends, and we're very close to one another. Tragedy struck once when I lost my elder brother. He was 22 at the time. It was a difficult time for everyone in the family. And my younger sister had empathized with me and told me to go out more and all of that after we had done the burial. So I took her advice and I did. I went for a gathering, a get-together at a friend's place. On arriving there, I realized that I was not as emotionally strong and stable to be out of the house as I imagined earlier. I sat at a corner quietly because I didn't want to rush anyone out. While sitting at the corner, a friend came and sat by me. He sat with me and did not say a word. He was silent through my stay, through my period while I was there. When I was done, I got up and left with a smile on my face because it felt like that was the best conversation I've had in years. Some people are not very good with words, but they have a way of showing you they care. That single act showed 2 things in one: a non-verbal communication letting me know that I'm here for you, and empathy to let me know I understand. Communication can be with a smile, a warm embrace. It can also be the applause a crowd might give to someone before they are done with their speech. It could also be a stern look a parent would give to a child when they're going out of line in a public place. Or my friend who sat quietly beside me. During my final exams in medical school, I was preparing very hard, and then I got a call that my dad had a few days to leave. This was not what I needed at that point in time. This was not what I needed to hear. I picked up the phone and I made a phone call to find out how he was doing. At the background, I could hear the monitors beeping away. I had to make a decision to listen to the monitors and get distracted and discouraged, or listen to the encouraging voice of my father, who was building me up and telling me, go ahead, you can do this. I promise I will call you every day. Every day I said my prayers, I worked very hard, and I ensured that I did my best. I got that call every day from my father. I refused to listen to the voice of the noise that was going on, the beeping sound that was causing some form of distraction. I decided to focus. With communication, there can be distractions, but you need to choose to focus on what is important. Alas, I passed the exam, but a few days later, he was gone. It's difficult when you lose a loved one in a family, but it's also important to know that everyone shares different feelings when they lose a loved one. We all interact differently with people. So we may not have the same reactions. And it's always important to communicate with one another. In communication, we can now develop empathy. Oprah Winfrey once said that leadership is about empathy. Empathy is important for leaders because if you know what the people want, what their pains are, you understand their struggles, and you're able to provide these things for them, then you've already answered a lot of their questions and solved a lot of their problems. Empathy is important in business with your staff to ensure that they do their best. When they have a boss or someone, a leader that understands what they're going through and understands the pain and struggles and looks for a way to make those pains go away, you find out that those in your team would want to work extra hard because you understand and you care. In medicine, communication and empathy is a way of our life. Communication is key because without adequate communication with our patients, we can't make the right diagnosis. If you're not telling us the right symptoms, then we find it difficult to know what is really wrong. We marry the symptoms and the findings to make a proper diagnosis. So communication in medicine is very important. And also, we have to empathize with our patients because most times we always have that challenge and we have to break that bad news to our patients or their relatives. So empathy is more like a part of our life. And in doing that, we need to set an environment. We need to put them in a quiet place. You can't break such a news in a public place or along the corridors. You need to show empathy. You need to break the news down and let them know before you say that, you have to let them know you have bad news so they are prepared to get that. It is important to show empathy to other people. It is important to care for others. It's important to communicate. And it's also important to have self-empathy. Self-empathy, that's being kind to yourself. Do not compare yourself with others. Don't beat yourself up when things don't go right. Don't put too much pressure on yourself. Don't give up on what you want to achieve. Be your own cheerleader. Be your own person. You are equally important as the next person. So be kind to yourself. Let us communicate better. Let us empathize more for a better lifestyle. Thank you.